Hello and welcome to this episode of Made in Plymouth, which today is coming to you from the old morgue in Stonehouse, which accounts for the slightly echoey background noise. And it's currently an exhibition space for local artists, which is very relevant to what we're talking about today, because I'm with Mike Vosper, who is going to be talking with us about some of the street art projects that he's involved in Plymouth. Hello, Mike.
How you doing?
Not so bad. So um, let's start. Just tell us very briefly, if you can, about the project itself, its aims, and how long it's been going.
Okay. Well, the aim of the project really was just to sort of regenerate and give some love to those unloved spaces in Plymouth. So a while ago, just before lockdown, I was going out painting over unloved spaces with some young people that I have to work with, who's got to do some unpaid work, and we were putting daisies on substations and bits and pieces like that. And then unfortunately, lockdown hit us. So we weren't allowed to have any contact with these people. So the project sort of stalled. And then as lockdown started to get eased up a little bit, I noticed in Stoke a bridge with some really offensive anti-government graffiti on it.
This is the one in Garfield Terrace?
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
So I had made some sort of like small stencils in work. So I knocked on the door of a building opposite the bridge, and two lovely ladies answered the door, and I said, "What do you think about the offensive graffiti on the bridge?" And he said, "Oh, we hate it. We just wish we could get something done with it." So I said, "Well, look, I might be able to help you." So I said, "Like, why don't you meet me here next Tuesday? I'll bring the paints, I'll bring some stencils, and we'll paint some flowers over the graffiti." So we started doing that, me and two old ladies, and then I joined a community Facebook group called the Stoke Residents, and then I said, "I'm going to be here next Tuesday if anybody wants to come and help." And then we made it every Tuesday for a couple of weeks, and then I thought, wow, I'm onto something here. There seems to be a lot of people that actually want to get out and maybe do what I'm thinking needs doing. So then I came up with the idea to create my own Facebook group called Plymouth Artists Together, shortened to PAT. So then I created a website, and we had a couple of members at the start, and then eventually more people joined because they could see what we were doing. We promoted it. And then I went to the council and I said, "Look, there's some hoardings down Union Street, that we could do some work on." They gave me permission to do it. So we were just painting over and putting daisies on them, like, because I'm not an artist. And then a couple of street artists said, like, "Why can't we put proper street art on the side of the boards?" So I went, "Yeah, okay, I've got carte blanche to do what I want. The council's not really that worried about it. Let's see what happens." So then one of the main graffiti guys came on board, and he did some really good stuff, brought two of his friends.
Was this related to some of the work you can see in Devonport Park on some of the blocks in there?
Yeah, we'll get onto that bit in a minute.
Okay.
So basically, this is how it sort of started. So then I got like a little bank of like artists that wanted to do sort of like free work. It's all done for free. And then I got some funding from the Safer Streets, and I managed then to buy a load of plywood sheets, which I cut up into sort of picture sizes, and then I would give them out to people to paint. And then when they came back, I would varnish them and then install them on the boards where the old Two Trees pub used to be.
Yeah.
And that was called the Random Art Corner. So on two sides, it's random pieces of art that everybody paints. There's no rhyme or reason. And then on one side, it's all street art. So that's what's happened then. Then after that, the boulevard was getting built and all the buildings was knocked down, and there was loads of hoardings going around to protect the site. And they were just like, just as hoardings normally happen, they're just blue and they get like scruffy, sort of like little bits of graffiti on them. So I went to the council and said, "Look, could we have that as a legal sort of street art space?" So they said yes. And we organised a couple of like paint jams down there. They got all redecorated with like street art, all different colours, all different styles. The street art, graffiti artists are happy because they got a big space to work with. The council's happy because it looks better. It looks like it's actually being maintained. And then we basically go down there every couple of months and we call like a paint jam. And that's how that one continues. That's how I work with the street artists.
So really then, you, from a very small beginning, you very quickly got quite a large collaborative group of people who are prepared to invest their time and effort into, one, producing their art, but two, actually, and I would stand by this argument, actually improving the look of an area. I don't see anything particularly attractive in driving down a road with blue hoardings, whereas I do find it quite attractive to walk past it and look at the art because it is art. It stimulates an emotion, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think the amount of times I've seen on other Facebook groups people sharing pictures of the artwork, interacting with it, parking the cars outside, parking the bikes outside, kids standing in front of it. So the great thing about Plymouth Artists Together is we got a broad range of artists. We got the people that paint at home on boards. We got the people that want to go out and paint graffiti style pieces, massive pieces like 8 foot, 9 foot long pieces. And then we got people who want to go out and find quirky spaces. And the perfect example of the last stuff we've done is on the old Palace Theatre in Union Street.
Yeah.
Around the corner, there's a lot of boarded windows. So I've got a little group of ladies together, and they went down there, and they all went there on a certain day, and they basically painted all the boarded windows with like flowery designs. My favourite one is like a take on Van Gogh of the sunflowers, which looks really, really good. And the last piece we sort of I helped to organise by getting the space and getting the tower scaffolding was a lady who did a poem, and she's trying to start a little movement up where she's called like words on walls.
Yeah.
And she did a lovely poem about children loving the unloved. So like the spiders and the worms and the dandelions.
Well, that particular piece is probably about 100 meters away from where we're currently sat. So what I think we'll do is when we do get outside and start looking at some of these pieces on the walls, I might just ask you to read that poem for us.
All right.
To end the episode. But we'll come back onto that in a minute. About the Facebook group, what sort of following have you got on there?
Okay, well, the Facebook group, we set it up a while back. And at the moment, we've got about 2,500 members on the Facebook group, and Instagram, probably about 1,700. I'm not sure everybody sees everything that we do every single day.
How long has that actually been running?
Ooh, I think the Facebook group's probably running about 3 years now.
Okay, but then again, from what you said earlier, from a slow start.
Oh, it started off with just me and a couple of like people that I knew. And it's like, people are recommending, people are like sort of just joining it. People just love to see the artwork going up and down around the city.
Yeah. So from the Facebook group itself, I mean, I've obviously scrolled through it, and indeed I am a member of it. There's a lot of different genres on display. Talk to us a bit about what we can expect to see if you were to take a walk around the city for some of the work that some of your members have produced.
Yeah, it's really good seeing it all started off with people giving up their time for free. I think what's happened now is I try to reward the ones that supported Pat in the first place. So a lot of the guys who did some of the street art graffiti, I've managed to get them some sort of like small commissions. We're working with Western Power, National Grid, they've changed their name now. We work with the Safer Streets community with Plymouth City Council. So going back to the genres, really, we got street artists and then we got graffiti artists. There's a bit of a divide there between the two of them because there's old school graffiti, which is all about lettering and the writing and stuff. Then you got the sort of street art, which is more the photorealistic pictures that you might see around Plymouth. And each to their own, everybody is in their own pocket, and a lot of people on the Facebook group tend to like the more street art style of things. But if you didn't have graffiti art, then street art would never evolved anyway.
No, I think that the arguments evolved from many years ago when I was asked the question, if you look at graffiti, am I looking at art or am I looking at vandalism? I think we can safely park that now and assume, well, not assume, but view it as art in its own right. The work that I've seen tends to lean more towards the art, though, the street art side, rather than graffiti. Do you think there's an imbalance there? Is there more of one thing than the other?
Well, I think when you look at all the hoardings, because they're temporary and nobody's sort of like overly concerned about what goes on there, you can let the lads go down on like a day and they're something like really colourful. It'd be a take on their sort of street name. And if you know what you can see, you can read it. It takes a while to sort of like get your eyes used to it, but you can actually see there's a name there somewhere. So by giving them that space to do it in the daytime, they can take the time over it. It's like someone who likes to go fishing. You might meet up with your two mates and go fishing for the day. These guys will meet up with their mates and paint for the day.
Yeah.
They'll put some music on. They might take a couple of cans of beer. and they're just spent like a day painting at their own expense. And sometimes these pieces are probably costing like £50 with like your spray paint and the background paint you put on first, and probably take 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, depending on how intricate it is and how quick they are. But that's their entertainment. That's their fishing. That's their surfing. That's their skateboarding.
So you're mentioning about the guys and gals, I'm assuming, meeting up of a weekend and doing a paint jam. Can you just explain what is a paint jam?
Well, a paint jam is what I've told is when a group of people get together. And sometimes they have like a theme, so they keep all the background the same. Sometimes they would use the same colours to make all the pieces sort of match. And they happen like every now and again. And the last one we did was unfortunately a tribute to one of the first sort of graffiti writers in the city who unfortunately passed away a couple of months ago. So I was contacted by members of the graffiti community and said, look, you're planning a jam in a couple of weeks' time. Can we turn it into a tribute for this guy? Explain the situation that he was one of the first guys who started to do graffiti in the city. He was a bit of a break dancer as well. He used to do the sort of like break dancing in the subways.
Okay.
So I said, yeah, fine. Let's turn it into that then. So the graffiti community put the feelers out there and started to invite people that they knew. I invited a few people that I knew. They invited a DJ to come down to sort of like spin some tracks, like all like hip hop sort of stuff. And then, lucky enough for me, I got a little bit of funding, which I will tell you about in a minute. So I put a barbecue on and paid for all the food and the drinks, not beer, of course, but soft drinks.
Yeah.
So when the graffiti jam was on, everybody had free food, and that was along the boulevard on a Sunday. And the great thing about the boulevard on the Sunday, it's a cul-de-sac, so no traffic come down there.
Yeah.
So we had about, I reckon we had about 30 guys all painting at the same time, music on, barbecue going, ice cold cans of drink being given out when they want it, all paid for from the crowd fund, because people donate to the crowd fund because they want to see all different types of artwork. And the feedback we got from writers who came down from as far as like past Exeter to come involved, it was one of the best jams they've been to in the Southwest.
Okay, and the street art does something similar to that?
No, the street art is more like the photorealistic stuff, and that tends to go on like permanent buildings, and that's more funded, like commissioned by like National Grid or Plymouth Community Homes or Plymouth City Council, the safer streets. So we could talk about that in a minute.
When I first met you a few weeks ago, down here as it happens, you kind of said somewhat self-deprecating. You seem to have a knack to get people to say yes to you for using space for people to do work on. Where does that come from?
Well, I don't know if it's just my enthusiasm or the fact the artwork sells it. So I'll give you an example. When we were doing the paint jams down at Mill Bay Boulevard, it was looking really, really nice. And the guys said to me, like we need somewhere we can go as in when we want. We don't want to have to keep waiting for jams all the time to paint. So I said, well, look, come back to me with a few locations and let me see what I can do within the city council. So I've got quite good contacts in the city council. I know a lot of councillors. So anyway, so they came back, and there's a tunnel in Stonehouse down by Richmond Walk. It's always been a known place for illegal graffiti.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, and then they said this would be the perfect place because it's dry. They can paint there. Lucky enough for us, the safer streets had just got a lot of money to sort of make places look safer. And that area down there was one of the places that people felt quite intimidated. The lighting in the tunnel was really poor. There was a lot of illegal graffiti in it, so that made people be a bit wary. So when I came to them and said, look, why don't we turn this into a legal space? It took about 9 months of negotiation with the council, various sort of like meetings, but eventually they agreed to it. And the lucky bit was they even funded some new streetlights. So I know the guys could be down there at 10 o'clock painting in the evening. So it's light enough to paint, it's dry, and that's a place where they can go and paint when they want, what they want.
Yeah, I suppose if the local authority are going to have to upgrade something, they're going to have to pay for it anyway. So it's a win-win situation, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, people walk through, they tend to sort of like see it. It's a tunnel. It seems to be accepted that like tunnels and subways do have sort of like sort of street art or graffiti art in them.
So the tunnel then, that's a legal space effectively for the artist now.
Yeah, there's not many in Plymouth at the moment. There was 2 that was organised pre me. And one's in Astor Park, which is up the top of Exeter Street.
Yeah.
That's been a legal space for a long time. And then some of the old writers that I now know negotiated the back wall of Larry Spears, which is in the car park. That's a legal space. So the three legal spaces now in Plymouth are Stonehouse Tunnel, Asda Park, and the back of Larry's. And I'm trying to negotiate with the council and a private business to create a couple more spaces where people can go and do legal art.
So yeah, the comments that filled a lot of pages in the Evening Herald when Lenkovitz had his mural painting time on the Barbican. Did you find that you get much of that sort of public comment coming back to you nowadays?
Yeah, well, we've had some really good press. We've had the TV involved with a couple of things we've done. We've had the press been in the local paper numerous times. So, and also the Facebook group. So I tend to share a lot of the stuff on Plymouth street scenes, get a lot of feedback on that. So everybody just seems to enjoy the colours going up. So everyone's got their preference. Some people like the graffiti art. Some people like the little paintings in the quirky places, and other people love the big, massive like murals that we're getting funding for. Example, there's a few I can sort of reel off the top of my head. One that I saw being shared on street scenes the other day was the Resurgam mural, basically, which was on the wall of the old Salvation Army church up the top of a mile away.
Yeah.
So we got some funding to do a mural, basically to do with the new plan of the rebuild of the city after the Second World War. Hence why we called it the Resurgam mural. So basically, the scene is the Blitz city on fire, shells of like churches and buildings, with a phoenix rising from the ashes, and the wings spell out Resurgam, to do with the Resurgam on
over the door
St
on
Andrew's Church.
St. Andrews,
And then basically, then that goes into the map of the Abercrombie plan, and also the building of the city centre. I'm not very happy with it because we were sort of under direction to try and get the map in, and it just basically breaks the sort of like the artwork. So whenever I see the picture shared on street scenes, they never share the other pieces. They don't share the map. They don't share the civic. They just share the Blitz scene, and they love it. So I've got the artists coming back in a week's time, and we're going to redo it to make it like a story. So basically, it'll be the Blitz going up to a couple of like cranes and like a wrecking ball, because a lot of the city was pulled down. It wasn't just the Germans that destroyed a lot of it.
To knock it down before it fell down.
Exactly. So, and then build into like maybe a skeleton of the civic centre with the Resurgam phoenix.
I get a sense that the feedback across the board is very, very positive. I've seen very little negative feedback. Would you say that's a fair comment?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if we look at it, there's always been like a street art culture in Plymouth, and it's been very sort of like under the radar, and it's always been good on since the late 80s. I didn't really know much about it. I'm in the scene now, and I didn't have a clue about it like 4 years ago. And I think it's sort of shed it into a new light. People can see it for what it is. So, people are happy to give their areas up for street art. And the next one we're going to be talking to, and that's actually going to happen because I had a meeting last night, is Shekinah, which is the homeless charity, are moving from the location in Bath Street to the old Stonehouse Creek Social Club.
Okay.
Now, a while ago, I noticed their fence on the back was looking a bit shabby, so it needs to be replaced. So I went to see the guys. So look, rather than replace it with like feather fencing, why don't you put some boards up and turn it into like a legal street art place or graffiti art place? And he quite liked the idea of that, and he was like, more to like, let's talk more in the future. But the great thing that sped it on is the Moxie Hotel. Had a big, when that was built, it had loads of boards around the sort of the building site all the way around. Now, lucky enough, one of the guys that I know was working in that area, and he managed to negotiate with the Moxie Hotel to take all these boards for free. So we got like 100 sort of hoarding boards. So I could then go back to Shekinah and say, look, we can board your fence out for nothing, which is going to save them thousands if they were going to sort of share. And because it's a charity.
This is win-win-win.
Yeah, so it is a win-win. And hopefully, what I'm hoping for, and I can't make no guarantees, but I'm sure the graffiti community will be glad of another space where they can go and paint when they want. So it'll be a bit of a respect thing, a bit like Larry Spears, where Larry's gave him the back wall, yet the front of his building never suffers from graffiti. So I'm hoping that the guys will like, great, we've got this massive wall. It's in a lovely area. They can paint in the sunshine, have a little barbecue, and I'm hoping then they will leave the front bit home. But that's the community working together. So that's so example, It's my idea, but I couldn't have done it without the likes of a guy called Simon who negotiated with the Moxie
Yeah.
Hotel to get the
It's
boards.
collaboration.
Yeah, and it's lucky enough for us. Simon's like a builder. He's got his own company. He's got a flatbed truck, so he could do all the logistics of getting the boards down there. And we're hoping that when we actually do build these boards, that the graph community will come and help to build them, and then that way they will, will respect them.
Good. Well, that's the same old saying in life. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
And for people listening to this podcast now and they're learning of all this for the first time and they want to be involved, where would you point them? What's the best way for someone who's got a penchant for street art, who wants to do some street art? How should they go about becoming a member of this very eclectic group of people?
Well, there's two ways. They don't really have to get involved or into the street art. They can go to Stonehouse Creek and paint when they want. They can go to Asda Park and paint when they want. They can go to Larry's and paint when they want. Hopefully, Shekinah, Stonehouse Creek, when those boards are up, they can go there and paint when they want. And we just want people to do nice pieces.
Yeah.
But those who want to get involved with paint jams, they're also advertised weeks beforehand on my sort of platforms and also on Plymouth Graffiti platform. So it's out there. They'd be very hard to miss if they did. There are people that want to paint quirky little places. They just need to sort of message me, say, I really want to paint this picture somewhere. Can you find a space for me? And I'll do my best to try and find it. If they want a board to paint, I can give them a board. They can paint that at home and give it back to me. And then eventually it will go on the random art corner.
Okay, so we'll put all these details on the podcast blurb for anybody that's interested, with links to websites, etc. But for now, we're going to say goodbye to the echoey morgue, and we're just going to go outside and reconvene in front of a piece of the art that we've just been talking about. And you can hear the continuing conversation between Mike and myself in the next episode of Made in Plymouth. In the meantime, if you wish to look into the works that we've been talking about, they can be found on Plymouth Artists Together Facebook page. The full details are contained on the blurb on the platform. Look forward to you joining us next time.